All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom Road Rage. Here we have Road Rage here in her little Corvette mode, looking pretty spiffy. So this figure is a Target Red Card exclusive, or at least was originally. Uh, Again, like if you're unfamiliar with that, like Target has like this, I think it's like a promotional credit card or something, and there have been a few figures that have been exclusives that you can only get if you have that credit card. But thankfully, like with the other red card exclusives, eventually, it's really just like early access for the people with the red card, and then everyone else who, I mean, who has access to a Target can buy them afterwards. So they just started showing up at Target without without needing the red card, which is good. So yeah, I found this one today, and it's pretty excited because this is a cool figure. This is a repaint of the Trax mold as Road Rage is traditionally, and it maintains the same sort of problems that mold has. They didn't really change a whole lot. The only real like sculpting difference is the head sculpt, but yeah, she looks pretty good in her car mode. One thing that I've noticed, which it shows up on camera, and usually it looks worse on camera than it does in person, is that the painted red plastic versus the sculpted red plastic doesn't really mesh super well. Like you can see it on camera, and it's like maybe a little bit worse on camera than in real life, but it sticks out a little bit, and usually I don't mind it so much. It's just a little bit weird because I feel like out of all colors of plastic, they usually pretty get it pretty spot on with red plastic. And this one, the painted plastic parts definitely look noticeably lighter than the sculpted plastic red parts. So it doesn't look too crazy good, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It's noticeable, and that's kind of a bummer. But yeah, she's got a nice flame deco pattern here. It's a little bit off center, which bugs me a little bit. I mean, you'd hardly notice it if it weren't for like the panel line right there. But if you look at like the Autobot symbol nose, it's a little bit further to the right, which bugs me minorly. Again, not the end of the world, just something that I noticed. But yeah, here she is with tracks, just so you can see what they look like there. And yeah, just like with versions of the Trax mold, I've seen like varying reports of how well the car mode stays together with these little panels on my Trax. Thankfully, I didn't have too big of a problem with it. Like this one sticks out a little bit, but I can usually get it to stay in. With Road Rage, this panel in particular just won't stay in, and that kind of sucks. Again, like with the other issues with it, it's not the end of the world, but it's a little bit unsightly, and that kind of sucks. But they look good together. And then here she is with Kingdom's Sideswipe, just so you can see for another standard size comparison. And worth mentioning here too, like if you look at the sculpted red plastic versus the painted red plastic on Sideswipe, it blends in a lot better. Whereas with Road Rage, it's a little bit more noticeable how big of a difference there is there. Like if you're looking at those lines right there, definitely see the difference here more than the difference here. Kind of sucks, but whatever. She comes with the same exact weapons that Trax did, obviously just cast in different shades of plastic here, although the black is pretty much the same. And it has the same storage or lack thereof as it did on Trax, where you just peg them together and then stick it on the back of the car. And I've complained about it a million times. I don't really think that should qualify as weapon storage because it's not actually storing anywhere. It's just tabbing onto the top of the car. I'm not a fan of that, but that is how it goes. It still has, of course, the same flight mode that Trax does. It gets there the exact same way. You just want to loosen this panel right here and then pull this whole section down, rotate it out like that, rotate this section forward, and then keep the wing there if it went with it, and then rotate this around. Do the same thing on the other side here. Rotate that all around. And then take these little fins in the back here, and they just rotate up like that. I find that these ones actually like come off their hinge a little bit easier than they did on Trax. I'm not sure what that's about exactly. It's a little bit annoying, but again, not the end of the world. Just you have to kind of like pay special attention to when you're flipping those around so that it doesn't come off. And yeah, it's the same sort of similar car mode. Oh, I got that to tab in. I think part of it is like when these arms are tabbed in, they push on the panel back here a little bit. I don't know. There's like, a few different like fixes that people have found for that seem kind of scary to do, and I've attempted doing them a bit, but yeah, I don't know if it's totally worth it. But yeah, same cool car mode, and then you have you can put the weapons back there. They look much more at home in this kind of thing, although it kind of feels like it defeats the purpose of the of the fins back there if we're just putting a weapon that is the width of the space in between the fins. So I don't know, but still looks good, just like with tracks. So I can get into that mode real quick as well. It's still kind of a silly concept inherently, like a flying car like that. But it's something that the original toy had, and it still has that. So it's good to have that accuracy. It's not like it's obtrusive to either one of the figures in either of their other modes. So yeah, looks pretty good. Still has that same functionality there. And then we can just continue on with the rest of the transformation. We'll take the weapons off for now and put them off to the side. You have to do that same kind of scary thing where you're separating this panel that is, again, painted clear plastic from this, and it's like you really have to kind of just like take it and like snap it in half, which feels really risky to the clear plastic, which tends to be a bit weaker. I might want to. I did this with tracks, and I like shaved down these tabs just a little bit at an angle, so it has a bit more like ability to kind of snap out of that without like flexing the clear plastic. So far, I haven't like seen any stress marks from it, but it definitely feels scary to do. But yeah, once you do that, well, we can put the fins back in. Yep, see there, that one pops off again. And then take this whole section and rotate that around like that. Take the legs here. You want to fold out these panels and then kind of untap the legs from each other. And then fold this panel with a foot. You want to fold it under and then kind of pull it over like that, and then bring it. It's like sort of like a weird mess of armatures here, but once you kind of know where everything goes, it's mostly intuitive. And then fold that panel back up, and then this is, notionally supposed to kind of stay tabbed in place. Just like with tracks, it's a little bit of a dubious sort of connection, but oh, God. There we go. Get that around like that, and then like I said, I feel like you're not paying super close attention to what you're doing with this. Like, it's important to put the foot around the other way. It seems intuitive to bring it that way, but like you really have to bring it down this way so that all of those line up. Then you can rotate it around at the waist. Take the faux chest section here, which we'll talk about in a bit. Pull that all the way out. It's just on a sliding joint there. Then double hinge this up. So these tabs, this little hook tab goes back into the body, and then this one goes into the chest. So that clicks in place, and then you can kind of compress the chest a bit more as well. Flip out the hands, and then take this whole section and rotate it around her head. I find that she's got a bit more clearance than Trax did, just because his like center crest thing kind of sticks up a little bit more. So it's not like less of a risk of like scraping off of any of the paint on the head sculpt, which can't tell. No, I actually think it's just cast in that color. So that wouldn't be an issue either way. But you bring that around and then take this whole section. You want to take this back window section, and it kind of compresses into there like that. And then this tab will go into that slot right there, just to tidy up as much as it can the backpack. And there you have Road Rage in her robot mode. And yeah, she looks pretty good. Just like with Trax, it still has the same sort of like attempted cheating chest piece, because this is not the actual roof of the car, even though it sort of looks like one, and that's where it ended up on the original toy. Again, usually that's like a total deal breaker with me. For these guys, like it looks different enough that I've sort of been able to kind of like justify to myself that no, this is just not the roof of the car. This is just like a separate, techie chest panel that comes from the internals of the or the vehicle mode or whatever, that like isn't a roof of the car, because it's like small enough and it's got like different detail on the top like that I can sort of justify that. But yeah, I mean, in general, I'm still not a fan of that practice of cheating to get the roof of the car on the chest or any other part, really. Like it just kind of it messes with me a lot. But this one looks different enough that I can kind of headcanon that it's not even the same piece, which it isn't, so it works. But yeah, she looks fairly good. Just like with Trax, she's got the same articulation. Her head is on a ball joint here. You can take a look at her new head sculpt there. I think it looks pretty good. Nice detail there. The arms are in a swivel here and can rotate all the way around, can rotate up and down, and kind of bring the wings with them or not. She's got a bicep swivel, 90 degrees of bend at the elbow. The wrists can only tilt in like that. Waist joint works pretty well. The hips can go forward and kind of move up this panel to get out of the way. And go back, out to the side, thigh swivel, about 90 degrees of bend at the knee, and then the feet are on ball joints. They're on this sort of like weird connection, which looks all right when you're looking at it from like an upward angle, but when you're looking at it straight on, it's a little strange, but can tilt forward and back, and then also tilt out to the side, which is nice. In terms of like mold degradation and stuff, I would say that the hips on this one definitely feel a little bit looser than Trax. Like, it's not crazy floppy, like she still stands okay, but when you can pick up a figure and very loosely shake it back and forth and the legs flop around, like that's too loose. Ugh, I don't know. Not crazy fond of that, but it's not too terrible because at least she looks good and she is able to still stand. It's just kind of, it doesn't feel great when you're messing around with her. And another thing that doesn't feel great is, again, still has this issue that Trax had where the leg panels don't really tab into place very securely or at all, really. And thankfully, the joints that they're attached to are tight enough that, like, you can stand her up and she doesn't, like, flop over. But again, when you're messing with the figure and, like, messing with the foot or whatever, it tends to just bring this whole panel with it, which is really annoying. Again, like if you have it just sitting still on a shelf, like it still looks good, but definitely an irritation at best. Obviously, you can give her weapons here. She can hold this one in her hand just like that, or plug it in on any of the ports that she has available. You can store it in the back here. This one you're supposed to put on top here to kind of mimic the double missiles that the old toy had. I still think it looks a little bit silly, like with it being one piece like that instead of kind of being on either side, but it works well enough. Again, like you can store it back here, but because these pieces don't have storage, really proper storage in vehicle mode, I tend to just put them in the box and display her as is, but that's just me. Here she is again with Trax, and yeah, they look good together. Obviously a different color scheme, but mostly the same mold. In terms of like the feel of the figure, I think, again, he feels a little bit better than she does, especially in the hips. And at least on my copy, his legs tend to stay together a bit better than hers does. But I've seen varying reports, so that really might be your mileage may vary on that. Like I've seen, people with way floppier legs on Trax, so it could be that I just didn't get a perfect copy of Road Rage myself. But either way, it's still not great that much variation in the quality exists with these figures. And then here she is again with Sideswipe. Thankfully, in this mode, you don't really see like a tremendous amount of the painted clear red plastic, so that is less noticeable in terms of like the mismatching of the painted red versus the casted red. But it still works very well. But yeah, overall, I think she's a fairly good-looking figure. I really like this shade of purple that they've used for the plastic here. It's just a very pleasant color. Again, with Trax, it's the same kind of thing where it's like, I don't like the cheating with the chest, but I can kind of ignore it. I think that they're both fairly good-looking figures, but in terms of like handling them, they're a little bit less than ideal, and she's a bit worse than Trax, unfortunately. But other than that, if you like the Trax mold, you'll like this figure. If you hate the Trax mold, you probably won't like this figure. I feel like down the road, we'll probably get a better Trax, and then probably along with that, a better Road Rage eventually. But these guys are decent stand-ins for now. So yeah, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom, Road Rage.